Welcome to Breaking Beliefs. My name is Amy Vetter, and this is where we explore the thoughts that shape our lives and our work. Each episode uncovers how challenging our limiting beliefs creates space for authentic growth and sustainable success. Let's break some beliefs together. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Lisa Even. Lisa is a keynote speaker, best-selling author, and leadership coach who helps streamline what she calls a good ripple effect. With a background in healthcare operations and team leadership, she now works with companies like ESPN, SHRM, and Disney to teach leaders how to show up with presence, build trust fast, and shape stronger cultures. She's also the host of Have Good Ripple Effect podcast. And today, she's here to bring insight, energy, and practical tools you won't want to miss. During this episode, we talk about Lisa's background growing up in a small farming community, her transformative college experience, and her career journey from healthcare to leadership training and now to speaking. Lisa provides strategies for creating joy in daily life and leaves some takeaways to remember in your own life. I hope you enjoy this episode. There's so many great tidbits in here to incorporate into your life. And just remember, if you want to take any of this stuff into action, we have coaching programs on businessbalancebliss.com. And we have one spot left for our upcoming retreat in October in San Diego. Hope to see you there. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. I'm here today with Lisa Even from Des Moines, Iowa. Lisa, you want to give a little background on yourself before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I am a corporate leader who went out on her own, and now I do keynote speaking all around this idea, really two ideas actually. This idea that we can have good ripple effect. And then the second one is really around making joy your job. We often feel like after this project or after my kids are grown or after the thing, we can find joy. And so those are really the two areas that I love to keynote speak about.
That's awesome. Right up my alley. So great to have you on. Well, you want to give us, where did you start out? So where did you grow up? What did your parents do for their occupations?
Oh, yeah. My dad worked on cars and then worked at a car dealership pretty much my entire life. And then my mom was a hotel housekeeper. And so when I think about kind of where it all started, it started in a really tiny farming community in Northeast Iowa, where it was like a beautiful little bubble. Like there was no crime, but you also didn't maybe go out and see the world. And so as my story unfolded, I was like, I want to go out and see a few things.
So, did you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger sister. So I was the oldest of two. And then I have a really large extended family. So mom was one of 11 and my dad is one of 8. So I've got like close to like 40, 50 first cousins.
Oh, wow. So were they all living near you?
A good portion of them. A lot of them.
Okay. So you were the town.
Yeah, we're the town. It was like before you could date someone, you're like, am I related to you?
So when you were growing up, like what kind of things did you play or what were you doing?
I worked a lot. It was a really big deal for my parents were like, you need really good work ethic. And so my first job was washing dishes at a small cafe where farmers and locals and truckers would come. And then I moved into a waitressing position. And I worked also at a sandwich shop a few doors down some days a week. So I did a lot of working. And then kind of in small towns, you end up doing everything because they need everyone to play. So I was in a lot of sports. And I also was in band, which was kind of a fun, like you don't often find people that maybe do both.
Right. Yeah. So what did you play? What instrument?
I played the trumpet.
Oh, okay. Well, that's where the cute boys were.
I know. We got to hang out like in the back row.
So with that, what did you said, that you knew you were in a small town. What got you thinking that there was something more out there? Did it start when you were a child? Was there something you watched? Like what is it
Yeah.
when you have such a family insulated community like that.
Space.
Yeah.
I would say and I often actually use this in a lot of my keynote speaking, like the first big ripple effect, meaning like the first person to really, I don't know, make an impact in my world was in high school. I had to do an internship because they made you. Like everybody needed to do, I think it was like an 8 or 9 week internship. And I filled out the sheet and I just wrote like, put me somewhere fun. And they paired me with our public relations lady at our small town hospital, and her name was Brenda. Oh. And I often say like Brenda changed the entire trajectory of my life. Like
really
in a very quick way. I was sitting at our computer. It was back before everybody had computers, so we had to like take turns using her computer. So
yeah.
I was at her computer. She was at her side table in her office, and I was working, and she was just chit-chatting a bit, and she's like, yeah, where are you going to college? And I looked at her and I said, well, it's really expensive. I'm not. Like, we don't have that kind of money. And my dad, always kind of being fairly practical, wasn't against college per se, but was just kind of like, so you're going to take a loan for a piece of paper for a job you're not guaranteed. Like, he just could not figure out how taking a big old, batch of money out of the bank and then being like, hopefully I get a job was going to be the way. And she kind of, when I said, like, we don't pay for a piece of paper in our family, she kind of looked at me and laughed and was like, oh, honey, but the world is big out there. And was really just the first person to kind of stop me in my tracks and say, but you could. And it was before electronic applications. And so she helped me like request paperwork. And she's like, just go see it. Go see a college. And as she knew, the rest would be history. So I ended up scheduling a visit day at a college that was like right under an hour away from my house. My car was kind of a beater. And so I was like, I can't go too far because I won't be able to get home. And yeah, I ended up going, and it was the best thing just to like, I was surrounded by kids from Chicago and like all of these amazing places. And it really just like opened my eyes to, wow, there's all sorts of things that you could do or be or see. Mm-hmm. So you just give it up for Brenda because she.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it also is something about belief systems that you don't realize whether it's your belief or it's someone else's belief, where you're repeating what your dad's saying.
And it was very logical and actually like a really smart decision in many ways. But it really also was just sort of limiting in that I probably would have stayed in our small town, which there's nothing bad about that. But no. I think from a person who really does want to like think, is kind of a global thinker. So It was fun to like see more global type things of like, oh, this connects to that. Like,
oh. Well, and your dad's way of thinking is like, if you're just going to be in the small town, why would you pay for college?
Yeah. Well, and he had seen it. A lot of like people in our town had gone away and then came back and were really like just financially strapped. And so it's almost like I got what would you say, like the gift of both like financial savviness along with like a little bit of worldly, get out there and see it.
Yeah. So when you were telling your dad that you're going to consider doing this, how did that conversation go?
He's really not an overly emotional guy. So he took it really well and was just kind of like, well, I guess we can go look at it and kind of see, but I'm not really sure about this. And they had never really been to college. So I'm guessing he was a little like, I just don't know how to do this. He hadn't taken a loan, out and other than buying their house. So it was kind of like a big risk. And then I essentially applied for every financial, like federal grant and scholarship that you could. I was like $5,000 short. And he basically said, I'm going to give you the money, but if you don't finish, you pay me back and you might pay me back double. And it was like enough actually to kind of be like, I got to college and some people I think get to go and they have like, even my husband was like, oh yeah, I always knew I was going. And so they get there and they're like, this is so fun. Like I always knew I was going. I got there with maybe a little bit of stress of like, I cannot mess this up because there's a lot on the line if it doesn't go well. So I always think of college like awesome, but also I was a little stressed just because it was like, make it happen.
Yeah. And what did your mom think about you going to college?
She was excited. She's such a funny person in that she's just more like nervous that we're going to she wants us to be careful.
Yeah.
She literally like will hang up the phone even to this day. And she's like, okay, well, be good and be careful. And so I think her mind was like, I'm going to this big city, which the big city that I was going to was about 60,000 people. So depending on where you come from, like, that's either a giant or actually tiny.
Yeah.
And for her, it was like, you're going to a place that has a mall and a movie theater and all these things that maybe in our small town, you'd be like, gosh, that's scary.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that takes a lot of guts to do that. So how did you feel when you actually stepped foot in college?
In college. I remember my parents like carried my like the Tupperware tubs or big tubs to my room. And then they're kind of introverted. So they were like, have a great time. Bye.
Yeah.
And I remember them feeling like, I don't know, a mix of like nerves, but also, my parents had always instilled this, like, you can work hard. So I knew I could do that. And also this idea that you can figure it out. I have kids. I have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old. And the biggest thing I hope I give them is that everything is figure outable. Mm-hmm. And so I think I was carrying those two things of like, you can work hard and everything is figure outable. And I'm pretty extroverted. So I was like, I'll just make a friend and they will know what to do.
Yeah. So who was your first friend?
I had a couple. They had you do like an activity, and my friend Kelly, she and I, we did like bowling, and I remember sitting next to her on the bus, and she was like kind of one of those kids that like it was always a thing that she was going to go to college. So I was like, she knows what to do. And her older brother was at the college too. So that was nice because I was like, see, there are people who do this. You can do this. Like, just figure it out.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, did your sister end up going to college?
Yes. And actually,
you
like,
broke through the generational shift. You made the generational shift. Yeah.
We did. And like, even to this day, like my parents are advocates of college. I think it was kind of a mix of like, they just hadn't been around it. And that's where, when I say my dad talked about college more as like it's risky, but also like now talks about it like in certain circumstances for the right reasons, or like it makes sense. So that was exciting. And she actually went to be a chemical engineer, and then she went for data analytics. So very, very like college, like academic, technical degree, which was really fun to see too.
That is very cool. So did you know what you wanted to be when you got to college?
No, I basically did what Brenda did. Brenda was public relations. So I literally majored in public relations due to Brenda being like, I think you'd be good at it. You like to write, you like to read, you like to speak. And it's funny because in a way I didn't ever use it, but I also did, because post-college, I ended up deciding I was going to get a master's, because then by then I'm like, I love this. Yeah. And I ended up falling into healthcare. And that's really where a lot of my career was spent, was in the healthcare arena, in more operations and project management. So nothing to do with public relations, but it was a great foundation of like, how do you navigate and communicate thoughts and ideas?
Mm-hmm. So were there other things, like getting into college and seeing so many different viewpoints and worldliness, and just different philosophies? How did that sit with you coming from such a small town? Like what were you going through personally, like, as you were exploring that?
I think it was a little bit of culture shock because, I had grown up one way, and then all these kids had grown up a different way. And thankfully, my mom, my dad, and my sister are pretty introverted. And I'm an extreme extrovert. And even my mom always jokes, she's like, you look just like Grandma Madonna, but if you didn't look like her, we wouldn't have known where you came from. And so she was kind of always alluding to like, I was just a little bit different. And so oftentimes in my childhood, I think I was having to try on their glasses, like trying on my sister's glasses of like, why are you like this? Yeah. Or, like trying on my parents' glasses of like, why are you saying that? Or why are you not saying that? So I spent a lot of time my first couple of years at college kind of being in awe secretly. Like I was like, oh, like that's normal for you. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then like trying on their glasses of like, it was like you rode the train to and from school, or, you know, you've been all over the world and it was very normal for you to vacation somewhere fantastic, like over Christmas break. And I think that was probably most of what I felt, was a little bit of like, this is your normal.
Right.
This is your normal. Huh.
And it can be.
And it can be.
So, how did you end up in healthcare?
Yeah. So I met my husband in college.
Okay.
And he was going into healthcare. And so when we ended up after college moving in together, and when he was studying in healthcare, and I thought, well, I need a job because I was going to do my master's program at night and on the weekends. Maybe I'll get something in healthcare because then like I'll know what he's talking about. And so, you know, it was like a lot of what I've done is like emulate the people around you, right? And so I was like, okay. I ended up getting my first official job was at a staffing company for healthcare. So they were staffing healthcare professionals into positions and covering essentially shifts in the emergency rooms. So like a lot of times when you go to the doctor or the ER, a lot of those doctors are contracted, and we were the company to contract those doctors to be at those hospitals, because one of the only places in the hospital that's 24/7, aside from maybe your operating rooms, is your emergency rooms. And so little small town hospitals struggle to find that many doctors to work that many hours in the year. And that's why they end up contracting out, which is way more than our listeners want to know. But ultimately I ended up working for a company that did that. And then I was doing a lot of like projects on the side at that company. And they were like, hey, you're really good and organized. You should do some project work. So that's how I tipped from like staffing to projects, and then eventually into healthcare operations.
Okay. And then where did you go from there?
I moved into our health system that we live in Des Moines, Iowa. And so I worked for a health system doing a lot of project management. And then we ended up moving to Milwaukee, Wisconsin for about 10 years. And I had a senior leader, because I was doing project work. She's like, have you ever thought about leading people? And it was kind of the second big ripple effect. I was like, what do you mean, like leading people? She's like, in operations, like true, they report to you, you have a budget and a cost center. Have you ever thought about that? I think you'd be good at it. And I was like, oh, maybe. So I moved into people management, operational leadership in the neurosciences service line, and I loved it. I loved kind of my cranky employees that were like, I'm not doing it. And I'm like, okay, before I get mad, like, why aren't we doing it? Like, I just want to try on your glasses and see what you see. And maybe it's they're mad about something from 20 years ago. Maybe they are like nervous that everything's going to change. You know, maybe they're just not feeling seen and heard. And so I spent probably that first year of people leadership just trying on glasses and trying to better understand, like, why are you like this? And how did it get like that? Oh, got it. Okay. And then we can move from there.
Well, so what did you discover? Why were they like that?
I think it was a combination of historical baggage. We all carry the like things that have occurred in our past. And so we learn from them and we say like, well, we've already tried that, or this is scary. And so I think it was partially that. I think the other thing too is oftentimes leaders, they tell instead of ask. And so I was just trying to be a better asker of things, of like, do you think this would work? Like, what would go wrong? How have you experienced this in the past? And I think that really does open up a lot of dialogue between the people that we all want to solve the problem. So why not ask them how to solve the problem instead of just telling them like, this is our solution, and then them sitting there thinking, well, leadership never listens and they don't really know the job. And I'm like, I don't actually. Could you talk about that? I kind of want to know about that.
Yeah. So what kind of shift did you see taking that approach?
I saw a shift. The first shift I saw was in my engagement score. So every year in a lot of corporate companies, they take people take an engagement survey. And by my second year, I had a lot of like yeses, essentially, where they were saying like, we feel valued, we feel included. I also saw that trickle over into our patient satisfaction scores. So when you go to the doctor, they usually ask you things like, did you enjoy the visit and was it helpful? So I was starting to see some of those metrics move. And then probably the most exciting metric for me was that our turnover rate went down. And it was like, I am holding on to the talent. they don't want to go places. And even the people that did end up leaving, like a few of them were like, they came back. They were like, hey, I thought I wanted to be closer to home. My commute was going to be less, but actually it kind of sucks over here. Can I come back? And I was like,
Yeah.
yes, please. Like, I would love to have you back. So I think those were just 3 of them. I'm sure there are more, but from a official leadership metric standpoint, those were the 3 that I was like, if our people are happy, our patients are happy, and I get to keep them longer.
Yeah. Which is, huge metrics that affect the bottom line.
Yeah. Over and over.
Yeah. So when did you make the shift to do what you do now?
Yeah, we were moving back to Iowa. So lived in Wisconsin for those 10 years, decided to move back to Iowa. And my husband looked at me and he's like, go teach people how to lead people. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you should do it. You have a really great way of engaging with your team, like teach people that out in the world. So I thought I was going to do workshops and training for frontline leaders. And then COVID hit. We moved back to Iowa like 3 or 4 months before COVID. So I was in a new city and no one knew me. And I was like, great, this is great. So what I ultimately did was I reached out to 10 or 15 friends and I said, hey, we're all at home. Who do you know that likes to talk about leadership? Like, I just want to schedule virtual coffee with them and learn a little bit about leadership and what they think, their perspective, again, trying on their glasses. And those 10 people at the end of the conversation, I said, who else should I talk to? Those 10 people sent me 10 people who sent me 10 people. And before I knew it, I had done like 300 virtual coffees and inadvertently had spread my name across the community. And so I started getting booked for not only workshops, but I had a couple people say, you'd be great as a keynote speaker. Like, you have a ton of energy. I'm like, yep. And way too much coffee. So, yeah, that's kind of how I pivoted into the world of training and then speaking. And now I do probably more speaking than training, but it's been amazing to be able to not only share some stories and some strategies, but also get to peek into organizations just doing some pretty amazing things and having really good ripple effect. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
this is where it's at.
Yeah. So, what are some of the top strategies that you tell leaders?
Yeah. A couple of them are, I will ask them like, hey, what's your favorite season? And I'll have people raise their hand. Like, is it fall? Is it spring? Is it summer, winter? And then I'll say, okay, follow me for just a second. We're going to put that aside. And then I'll say, we're going to do 2 things. The first one was your favorite season. The second one, I want you to imagine that you are going to give someone at your next meeting a gift. Someone at your next meeting, or maybe think of a meeting that's coming up, and you get to give this human a gift, and there is no rules. Okay, I am paying for this gift. So it can be like tangible or intangible, things like trips to Mexico, a chef, a housekeeper. It can be perfect paperwork. Maybe the screen on your computer, you're fixing that data field that always like comes back with an error. Whatever it is, you can give unlimited PTO, you name it. What are we giving? And then I have them tell me what their perfect gift that they're going to give is. And then I say, well, what if you're already giving a gift? What if you're already giving a gift and that gift is your presence? Like, you walk into a room and people feel it. And much like our favorite season, they prepare for you. Like, have you ever been in a meeting where someone comes walking down the hall and you think to yourself, like, not today. Oh, not today. Yeah, we prepare for the people around us. And so people prepare for us. We essentially bring the weather into the room. And so I get them thinking about what weather are they bringing and what's the gift that they're giving. If you're cranky, or maybe you've got some people on your team that are complaining a lot, like, how do you shift not only maybe your presence, but how do you help the people around you? And then we talk a little bit about values and how what we really think about, say, and do comes from a lot of our values. And then the third thing that we do, not to get too lengthy, but we talk about culture. And they get to do a culture audit of like, what are the things in our team's culture that we like? And what are we going to get rid of? Like, how can we make this a place and a space that has good ripple effect? And if something is happening that's not, how are we going to kick that to the curb?
Awesome. So I have to ask you, like, is there anything that you miss about small town living now that you've done this whole shift in your life, your world, and living a whole different life than your parents could have expected?
Yeah.
What things do you
miss? Ooh, those are good. I think like a couple of things. I just think back to where in a small town, like you don't lock your doors, right? You're just that, you know, everybody and everybody knows everybody. And so I think about the experience that my kids are getting versus the experience that I had. And I think like, oh, you'll never know what it's like to like leave your door unlocked, or, you know, like I could pretty much walk or bike to everything. Like if I wanted to get to the pool, I could. If I wanted to get to my friend's house, I could. And I know that my kids oftentimes like their friends, because we're in a bigger city, you know, they don't live right next door. So I think I miss that probably. And a little bit of the people, like the people in a small town are a lot more friendly than a big town. When we were living in Milwaukee, even just like moving back to Des Moines, I'll never forget my son was in second grade and we stopped at a gas station here in Des Moines. And in Milwaukee, the gas station attendants are behind glass, like bulletproof glass or whatever, and you pay through like a little hole you put your credit card in. And in Iowa, that would be weird. Like, it would be so weird. And I remember like I went to get some gas and grab a snack. And, you know, I said to my son, like, do you want, you know, what do you want? And then we go to pay. And the guy at the register was like, geez, it's so hot out there today. Have you been outside? And was like asking, you know, three to four questions. And we get outside and my son, like in second grade, has like scrunched up eyebrows and is like, why was that guy so nice? And I was like thinking to myself, this is why we're moving back to Iowa.
Yeah.
Even though we moved back to a large city,
It's
not, it still was. So I think those are some of the things that I'm like, oh, in a small town, you don't even know.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I grew up in the Midwest in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I had my kids in South Florida, and they had all their cousins lived in Cincinnati. So, you know, by the time my son was 11, we decided to move back. And when we did, we went. Something similar happened where they had to get their physicals before school started.
Yeah.
And when we walked in, the attendant, you know, at the doctor's office was like, hi there, and like asked them all these questions or whatever. And we sat down and he's like, they're so nice here. I'm like, no, that's how people are supposed to behave.
Yes. Like that's so
I mean, Lori, you don't think that's normal? And we like would talk about how, you know, if you rush and people would be an attendant and say like, how are you doing today? Or how's your day going? Like you literally have to pause and answer. They're not just like saying it.
Yes, it would be offensive.
If they even said that, but you know, you're constantly rushing past people and you know, you have to calm yourself down. The ripple effect of being present, right?
It's the gift. And sometimes it's hard to give that gift when you're like busy and in a hurry, but it truly does make a difference. I think that was the biggest thing I like took away from just being a leader is like, if you give a little bit of your time to listen, man, the ripple effect of that truly does pay off. And sometimes it feels like we have other things to do, which we do, but it also is like that impact later of compounding the, like, I don't know, all the efforts together. It's like, I can't do it all myself. So I need my team to like be engaged and excited to do it together.
It's awesome. Well, great. So I like to end our conversation with just a rapid fire question set.
Okay.
So you pick a category: family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Ooh, okay. Let's do family and friends.
Okay. Things or actions I don't have that I want to have.
Things or actions I don't have that I want to have. Ooh, that's a really good one. We, really quick side note, make joy our job. I wrote a book called Joy is My Job, and it's all about this idea that if you wait for joy to find you, you'll wait forever. And I think the joy that we had when our kids were little was easier. And so I wish I could slow down time and make more joy with my kids now because they're so busy in sports and school. But we still sneak it in. So I feel like it's like a half answer of like, yes, and I wish we
Things or actions I do have that I want to keep.
Ooh, yeah. We track our joy like a bank account in our family. So that's really fun. Our kids have a joy list. We put it on our calendar. My husband and I sit down once a month and look at our joy as if it was a bank account. And so we do have that. it's getting harder and harder to like sneak it in there with my son's like, well, I'm going to hang out with my friends. Bye. I'm like,
Yeah.
I have joy with mom.
Yeah. So what type of things are on a joy list?
We started really simple, like good food, get outside, music. Now we have like, my daughter has a very like specific, like make this type of meal, go to this type of place. But, in the book, I give a ton of joy challenges of like a 1 hour joy challenge, like be a tourist in your own town type of challenge. So we're always kind of coming up with new and fun ways. They should be hopefully inexpensive, easy enough to do, like real life stuff.
Yeah. And do you have like a designated day to do those things or?
No, we try to sprinkle them in throughout. So we look at our calendar and kind of say like, okay, where can we put some? Usually I try to do them in like 15 to 20 minute increments. Mm-hmm. So I have a pond right near my house and I walk around it. It takes me 12 minutes. So I like to have like a couple walk around the ponds on my calendar. And then I've been trying to be better about exercising. So I have a couple of those. And then one of our focus areas for this year is just to laugh more. And so I'm listening to some books, some audiobooks while I walk of comedians. And then my husband and I have been trying to catch like local comedians here. So those are just some of the examples.
Yeah.
And then we try to do like a staycay and a vacay. And before either of those, we usually like to do like a themed meal or something that gets us like excited about the thing that's coming up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're just kind of like trying to like sneak them in here and there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Next question. Things or actions I don't have that I don't want to have with my family.
Ooh, that I don't want to have. I get nervous about like as I age, not being able to be as active. So I think that's a fear. I don't want to not be able to be active is like, I don't know, that's probably like a little bit deeper than you think, but I want to stay healthy. And I know that's kind of an answer, but that's what I think about.
Yeah. Okay. Last one. Things or actions that I do have that I don't want, that I want to get rid of.
Ooh, that I want to get rid of. I wish I could get rid of my laundry and my dishes. Like if I just had a dish fairy and a laundry fairy to come to my house.
And that would be up space for your joy list.
I know. I could do so many cool things.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and all the tips you've had. Is there anything you want to make sure the audience that you didn't get to share, or maybe that you want to reiterate that you talked about during this time?
I think the only thing we didn't touch on is this idea that we all should live in the lab. So I envision like big science geeky goggles and like a big beaker. And I tend to approach life of like, okay, if I try it as if it was an experiment, if it fails, well, lots of experiments fail. So I think that's the one thing of like, if you're interested in making more joy or creating impact, get out there and do a little experiment and see where it goes. Because I think that's how we get ourselves like, there's a quote that says, feeling ready isn't a feeling, it's a decision. Mm-hmm. And I think like a little bit like that, like just do a little experimenting.
So feeling ready isn't, how did you say?
Yeah, feeling ready isn't an emotion. Like you're not going to ever feel ready. It's actually a decision. So I think that just like making the decision to live in the lab a little bit.
Yeah.
Because a lot of us are perfectionists and we want it to go perfect. And we think, well, we'll just wait till we're ready and then it'll be ready. And I'm like, oh, you can just do an experiment and see what happens with it.
That's for sure. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining today. I really enjoyed our conversation and I think there'll be a lot for everyone to take away.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And now for my mindful moments with this episode with Lisa Even, which I really enjoyed. Hope you did too. And you can tell that she lives her work and spreading joy. So we talked about her beginnings in a small town and really opening up her belief systems in how you go about life when you've had parents that have lived in a small town their whole life and an extended family that's as large as Lisa's. You grow up with a way of thinking and thinking that this is the world and this is your future. And that's why people that come into our lives from the outside can be so important as reflections of maybe things we want to do, maybe things we don't want to do. It can be either or both, but it also opens our eyes to get to know ourselves a little better. And we talked about the first person that came into her life, and as she calls it, had a ripple effect into her life. And that was when she did an internship in high school and realized that college was something that she might want to explore. And I thought this was really interesting because her dad saying, don't pay for a piece of paper, and that being kind of a family mantra, where their purview of that belief system was from their shoes. However, when we start opening up our world and getting to know other people and realizing that everybody has a difference of opinion based on what they've been through or the advantages that they've seen, that is so important in our own growth. And it also is important in the way that we get along with people that have different opinions as well. I think you saw in the story that, she was just saying exactly what she had heard her whole life. The thing is a lot of times when we repeat a belief that becomes our belief, and we don't even know why, we just are repeating what we've always heard. When somebody has a belief that's opposite, like in this case, that college was something that might open up her world, we have the option to get present and try to understand and ask questions, or we have the option to argue it and plant firmly in what we believe or what we've been taught to believe. And I think this was an important part of the story because when I asked her, when she went back to her dad about that she might be interested in going to college, that he was open to looking at it and exploring it with her. I think that's a key difference in how we approach life, where he could have stood firm in his belief, saying that this was a family belief, and gotten angry with her because she wanted to do this. But the fact that he was open to it also had a ripple effect in her life, and also her sister's life, who ended up going to college, as she kind of broke that generational pattern to really shift that thinking and opportunity that was available. These things become so important in our lives because they also affect us in all the work that we do as well. And that's where we really started to talk about leadership. And the same type of thing is we can see how people show up. They might be frustrated. They might be angry. They might be complaining. And we can take that outward behavior and pass judgment. Or you can step back and try to understand why they're feeling the way that they are. May not be that you agree with it, but you've actually taken a moment to understand it. And she called that really understanding that historical baggage of coming into a role and understanding what people have been through, what they've tried before, why they're negative on something, so that you can push forward a new transformation, a new innovation. And utilizing basically what she was talking about of listeners ask instead of tell is active listening, is having that open dialogue and making sure that you really understand how someone's feeling in their shoes before you end up, pushing forward your ideas so that you can incorporate whatever those pain points are into your ideas so you get everyone bought in. Now, a really important piece to this, because a lot of times we think that when we take the time to do these things, that it doesn't have a business effect. And when I asked her what kind of business effect it had, her engagement scores went up as far as her team members, but also in relation to that, the customer satisfaction rate went up and turnover rate went down. These immediately affect the bottom line. And this is really what I talk about in the fulfillment ROI, is this metric that we can put into our businesses to show the benefit of training and programs that we put into place so people can feel better, can feel more joy in the work that we do. And then another strategy she talked about was really giving the gift of being present. That we get so busy that when people approach us, a lot of times we are too busy to really answer it or get a full understanding of the issue. And so it's important that we really set time boundaries around the times that we are available for our team members so that we're mentally prepared to be present, to not be distracted with other work, other meetings, other phone calls, that we are actively present in those situations as we are meeting with people. So I do think that this last quote that she said is really, really important, because so many times as the world is changing, as businesses are changing, people feel like they're not ready. But I think that was really important what she said about that quote of feeling ready isn't an emotion, it's a decision. We can act like not doing anything isn't a decision, but it is a decision. So whether we respond or don't respond, we are making a decision, whether we're holding back the people around us because that has a ripple effect into their energy, or that we are actually deciding to do something about it. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did and really want to transform yourself and make that decision for yourself. That is what our coaching programs are all about at the B3 Method Institute. So if you haven't seen that recently, definitely go on to businessbalancebliss.com. Look at our offerings. We have self-paced offerings. We have live coaching offerings, and we have our 4-day retreat coming up in October. We have 1 room left with 2 beds. So if you want to get in on it, this is your time. So make sure to contact us if you're interested, and you can find out all that information on businessbalancebliss.com. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.